Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this episode of the show about the show. As always, a very happy Rusev Day to you all, although maybe not, depending on who you are. Today's episode is a milestone episode. This is episode 40 of the show about the show, and I am very pleased and very honored to have on from Cut 4 and MLB Jessica Kleinschmidt. She's also very active on Twitter. She has a fascination with Joey Votto. She just landed her dream job, and we're going to talk about what it's like to be a woman in a predominantly male industry. Jessica is here, so let's go ahead and get started and bring her on. Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for coming on the show. So let's start, obviously, talk about the World Series. We've got the Dodgers, we've got the Red Sox, we've got the two of the highest paid teams in baseball. What are your thoughts through the first two games of the World Series? What's really stuck out to you?
Actually, David Price's performance just this postseason has been phenomenal to watch. He usually struggles in the postseason, and actually, I think it was before the World Series happened, he pretty much cut his ERA in half from his overall postseason ERA performance. So that was great to watch. And then, of course, his last two dominating outings has been great. Mookie Betts is always great to watch. These Red Sox stats have been absolutely phenomenal. And to see Justin Turner continue to be the guy who just comes up clutch in October has been fabulous to watch. And I like those storylines that show that these guys perform really well in the postseason, whether it's George Springer or Chris Taylor or Max Muncy. These guys really go clutch. So those have been kind of the things that I've been excited to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. And, for fans of the game, you think of the Dodgers, you think of Kershaw, you might think of Manny Machado, you might think of a couple other players. But, Justin Turner's kind of been one of those under-the-radar guys who, like you said, kind of seems to come up clutch in big-time situations. Talk about him. I mean, he had home runs, he had walk-off, or he had two big hits in the Milwaukee series. He had a home run and he had a walk-off. Talk to me about Justin Turner and just kind of what an underrated player he seems to be in baseball.
So I don't think he's underrated. I think he just has his tendencies to not perform at the right times until it is October. And then it's like, boom, he's out there. But, he did struggle a little bit this season with injuries, which is, that happens. And the timing couldn't have been worse. It was right after they signed a big extension for him, and that was kind of interesting to watch. But, overall, he's probably one of the most consistent ball players, I guess. And I know I kind of am taking back what I said previously, but when he is in the right situation, he can come through clutch. Like I said, October baseball is his bread and butter. So I think that's always great. And he's, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the Boston Red Sox a few years back, where they may not have had a really strong regular season, but once they make it to the postseason, they're going to be phenomenal. So that's always great to watch. But I mean, the guy just, I don't know what it is, whether it's the weather, he just performs better in cold weather. I don't know, but something just seems to just work for him the moment it gets cold.
I think it's that beard. I really do. I think he does something to that beard. I think there's magic in that beard. You work for Cut 4 and for MLB. Talk to me about how you got involved working with those two places.
It's a very long story. The short story is I had a little blog, and I basically put my work out there, and it was actually the Small Little A's blog, and I was actually just bashing on myself, making fun of the weird things I would say during baseball games. And this person found it, and he said, well, hey, would you like to write for my site? Unfortunately, the baseball season's over, but we can start you off with some fantasy football stuff. And so I did fantasy football, and then baseball season came around, and that's when I realized, I need to be writing about baseball. Time went on. I wrote for multiple sites, and that turned into, being my byline being on Fox Sports, MSN Sports, front page of really big news, and, breaking stories. And I worked for FanDuel, did some content stuff for them. That was my really big break. And I was freelancing for pretty much, FanDuel let us all go. And after that, I was freelancing for 6 months. But when you're freelancing for 6 months, it might as well be 5 years because it seems like it just takes forever. I taught myself a lot of self-discipline. Sure. And then I applied. There was an opening at Cut 4, and I applied, and it just was such a great fit. And I remember during the second stream of in-person or over the Skype interview where I realized, like, this feels like home, and I really want to work there. And it's when I'm leaving, of course, this is actually one of my second to last week there, and it was a very tough decision to make because I feel like they're my family, and of course they wanted to keep me, and they were trying to make it to where I could stay, but moving on to covering multiple sports and going back to the Bay Area just feels right.
Absolutely, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Let's kind of talk about a certain baseball player. Let's talk about a guy who plays first base for the Cincinnati Reds. Let's talk about Joey Votto. You have a fascination with Joey Votto that's really interesting. How did that come about?
So actually, it was one of my closest friends, Melissa. She kind of told me about him, and I knew him from a fantasy baseball perspective because I was a fantasy analyst for so many years, but I never realized how quirky he actually was. Now, there was this one interview I covered, and he talked about like how he was like, I'm single, I'm good looking, I'm rich, and I was like, okay, this guy's interesting. And as years went by, he opened up to the media more and more. And that's when I was kind of like, this guy's funky and weird. He's just different. And, I've spoken to so many athletes, every single sport over my career, and he's just always been different. And from a Cut 4 perspective, that's what we look for. We don't want to push this, like, basically tell you, hey, baseball's fun. We want to highlight that. We want to remind you this is fun.
Sure.
And that's our ultimate goal. And in a sport that desperately needs it, he's done everything. And the cool thing about it is how diverse he is. So he'll do something funny where he'll mess with the fans, but when he's talking about, hitting instruction or how to hit, you stop and you listen. And he's just so articulate and fun, and he's just like what exudes the type of player or the type of human being you want to be. He's genuinely my hero. Like, I would love to be able to bring the combination of entertainment and knowledge into my job like he does. So that's why I'm so fascinated by him.
Absolutely. And, I've read stats that say things like, Joey Votto has had 6 infield pop-ups in the last 7 years, things like that. So kind of like you mentioned, he really, really, really takes hitting seriously. But when he's not hitting, you mentioned kind of the interaction with the fans. I saw he traded a fan a jersey late in the season for a shirt that said Votto for mayor or something like that. So
Votto for president,
Votto for president,
or Prime Minister.
And you nailed
Prime
it on the head.
Minister,
I mean, baseball.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. And you nailed it on the head. I mean, baseball needs characters. It needs these kind of weird, quirky guys. And for Joey Votto to be that it's fantastic. What about a couple of years ago when he was when the Reds were doing something to get a player into the All-Star game and they with a goat? Wasn't Joey Votto promising somebody a goat?
It was a donkey. It was a donkey.
It was a donkey. Okay.
So it was Cozart, who was then on the Reds. He's now so
on the Angels.
Joey Votto, of course, he's now on the Angels. Cozart, Joey Votto instantly made the All-Star team. It doesn't really matter if he's going over 162 or what have you. He'll make the All-Star team. So he wanted, the cool thing that I love and hate about the All-Star voting is you can kind of depend on fans to do it, which I love it and I hate it, but I also think sometimes the baseball, whatever, anywho. And it was cool to know that he was going to help out. So what he did was he dressed as a donkey, like the Shrek donkey on MLB Network, and he wanted to help, get Zach Cozart on the All-Star team. So he said, if you guys vote Zach onto the All-Star team, I'll get him a donkey. And you bet your ass, he got him a donkey. And they named him Donald the Donkey because Zach Cozart's son was obsessed with Donald the Duck at the time, probably still is. And they brought the donkey in, they fed him, and it was the cutest donkey ever. So, he stuck to his word, and you got a pet.
Yeah, absolutely. let's switch gears here a little bit. You mentioned earlier you're leaving Cut 4. It's your second to last week. You just landed your dream job. Tell people about what your dream job is and what you're going to be doing.
So here's the thing. When I say my dream job, I almost felt bad for saying that because MLB was kind of what I'm doing now is my dream job. But the thing I noticed is I live in Reno, Nevada, and it's difficult to kind of go out on assignments unless I travel or do more stuff. And I thought that I would only do baseball for the rest of my life, which isn't a bad thing. Even my boss now is like, I would love to keep you forever. It'd be great. But I realized, like, I'm the type of person where I want to be challenged. So NBC Sports Bay Area brings that. I can still push out all the content, do everything, whether it's, reporting, just the blogs, the podcasts, whatever. And but I can do this for multiple teams. And to do it at a time where the Warriors are the best team in basketball is just such a great thing. And the A's are coming back from a strong season. The Giants are rebuilding. The Raiders are moving. The Niners are struggling. But I love knowing that means that you could only go up from there. And, of course, the Sharks are having a phenomenal season. So it's nice to know that I'm going to be learning a lot more. Of course, I know football really pretty well. Baseball I can do in my sleep. But to relearn basketball and to learn about hockey and be able to contribute and make people fall in love with, sports again, that's great. Because I feel like I changed a lot of people's tune when it came to baseball. We weren't getting as rough of comments saying, like, well, I want to know this guy's WAR. I want to know his WOBA. Like, who gives a shit? Like, how about watch this game because it's cool or it's fun? So I want to make sure I'm able to do that with multiple sports and be challenged and learn something new and get to teach myself something again because I felt like I wasn't being pushed. And that's nothing toward my job. That was just the fact that I could do baseball in my sleep. So to kind of shake me up a little bit and start from scratch is going to be great. And it's just going to be good for my future too. That way I don't have anything holding me back from other sports. And it's a great place to work for. I grew up watching it. I lived in the Bay Area for a little bit. Obviously being able to cover my favorite team, the Oakland A's, is just going to be life-changing. And to have them actually seek me out was what blew my mind. I didn't think anybody saw my work. And to know that somebody thought of me in that aspect to actually want to work for them was phenomenal. And to work for such a great place like NBC, it's something that I've dreamt about since I was a little girl.
That's fantastic. And I can kind of relate a little bit to that too. I do this podcast occasionally and I guess maybe anybody who puts out content that isn't, ESPN or really famous, I suppose they all kind of feel like, oh, hey, nobody sees my work. So that is fantastic. Now you're going to be working with the Oakland A's.
And you can't stop that. You can't stop that from, like, pushing out content. Like, that's what I did. Like, I didn't think anybody was reading my stuff. And then when I was applying for jobs, they were saying, why did it take you so long to apply? And so you have to keep pushing out content. You have to be yourself, but be different, which sounds weird. But in an industry where a lot of people are fake, if you stay true to who you are and put out fun stuff and educated stuff, people will see it, and you'll get the right amount of attention, and your life will change. I can promise them that.
So you need to be the Joey Votto of your industry.
Yes, be the Joey Votto
quirky and unique
in the world. Yes.
I like that. I think we just came up with a T-shirt.
Perfect.
I think we just came up with a T-shirt. So you're going to be working with the Oakland A's. Obviously, they were a playoff team. Chris Davis led the majors with 48 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a team that is covered, that isn't a big market team, but still wins games. Does that entice you even a little bit more to just be like, okay, I get to go from covering, all these, maybe big market teams to a team that had the lowest payroll in baseball and made the playoffs?
So it's the same story every year with the A's. There's not a lot of money involved, but after being a fan of theirs and being raised or being really good friends with people who are those fans, I've heard so many different stories, and it breaks my heart because, I'll be covering an area where the Giants had a really, really, really awful season, but people came out to more of those games. Then you flip it, and the A's have Matt Chapman, one of the best ball players in the league right now, begging fans to come to games. And I know there are so many different reasons why people weren't going to A's games, but at the same time, it's a smack in the face. But I like knowing that I want to be able to help put out that content or make people watch and make people pay attention, whether it's me doing something ridiculous or them doing something ridiculous. I don't care, but I feel like they deserve the right amount of respect. And I know that money does come down to it. That's how it works, right? You pay the best players to play on your team, and you're going to make the playoffs. But people talk about Moneyball, and they get there, and they get there, and they get there, but they can't get past there. They could either win the AL West, they can win the wild card, they can dominate playoffs, but they can't make it past a certain, finish line. And that's a whole different podcast, but I kind of like knowing that they're the underdogs. And, you can't really bash on an A's fan. They're like the lovable losers, and I think it's great. Mm-hmm. And I can promise you they're like some of the best fans in baseball. But a lot of my friends aren't A's fans. But when they go to A's games to watch the visiting team, they're treated with nothing but respect. And you don't see that in a lot of, fandoms. And I think that's important. But it's just a team that I grew up, watching. And it's a huge turnover. But, it reminds me of home. It reminds me of when I was little. It reminds me when I played Little League. It reminds me when I, fell in love with the sport. So you can't, teach that. It's something I was born with, and I can't wait to show that off to the Bay Area.
And I would imagine the Bay Area fans and fans around the country can't wait to see it. Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears here a little bit. One of the A's most popular writers is Susan Slusser. She is a woman who writes for baseball, and there's also Heidi Watney on MLB Network, and Jessica Mendoza became the main woman for Sunday Night Baseball. There was a lot of backlash with that. Being a woman in an industry that's dominated by men, can you talk about that and any challenges or maybe, any issues or harassment or any things like that you've had to overcome to work? Like, have you had to work twice as hard to get half as far?
Yeah, but I've always dealt with that. I actually grew up playing Little League baseball and Babe Ruth baseball with boys, so I always had to be a little bit better. And then my dad was the president of all the leagues, so I was like, well, I can't just be good, because if I'm good and make the team, they're going to say, oh, it's because your dad was the president. And so I had to work extra hard, and that really helped me just throughout life. I knew I always wanted to work in this industry, and I knew there was going to be some backlash, and it's not as bad as it used to be. When I first got in the industry, nobody took me seriously, which is okay. That's fine. But there's so much sexism in the world right now, and it spreads beyond sports media. And I get it, and people get mad that women didn't play the game, so why should they commentate? But also there's a lot of men that never played the game that have great careers in sports media, and they do the play-by-play, and they do the commentary and what have you, and it shows, that's fine, but we should also teach the world that there's other ways you can learn the sport. That's why I like it. I like asking questions. I'm not saying that since I played Little League, I deserve to do play-by-play, but I deserve the right to have had that chance. I didn't get to play high school ball because the coach said straight up, we are not going to put you on the team because they're softball. And that's the one of the few sports that it's two actually different sports. It's not women's baseball and men's baseball. It's softball and men's baseball. There is women's baseball, and that's the same, but back then they didn't have any leagues. And I want people to remember that if you tell a girl to go play softball because it's the same thing as baseball, you really need to take a reality check, because it's not. It took me so long to adjust. And, I wasn't given that chance. And I probably would, there's no way in hell I would have made the majors, but I think I deserved the right amount of chances as the men in my life or the boys in my life. So I didn't get that opportunity, but I knew that. So I wanted to learn. I wanted to relearn what these guys deal with, what it's like to go from the minors all the way up to the big leagues. And it's not just talent. It's knowing that these guys get paid practically nothing before they get their signing bonuses, or, when they're living in the Dominican or living in Cuba or living in these foreign countries that they're using tires for tees to hit the balls off of. There's so many things that you can learn as a woman. Now, when I first got in the industry, I got harassed constantly, and that wasn't just sexually. Women treated me like crap. They bullied me big time, and actually it was a huge A's fan base who treated me like crap, and, you know, it was awful, the stuff they would say. And as time went on, you know, you grow a thick skin, but I don't want people to say, oh, you know, you should get over it. Like, I shouldn't, you know, be okay with a man saying these things to me, or a woman saying that I'm fat and ugly or threatening my life. That's not okay. And especially people that aren't in the industry who have no idea what the hell they're talking about, to tell me to grow a thick skin when you're sitting in your 9-to-5 cubicle not doing shit with your life and you're miserable. Like, don't tell me that I should grow a thick skin, because that's not okay. And I realized I chose an industry and my type of personality. I got a lot of Twitter followers, but I'm a person, you know, and I, when I first got in the industry, there were no women I thought that I could look up to. I thought it was all dudes and all men. And that's what sucked, is I didn't think that anybody would believe me when I would complain. I had a recent situation a couple years back where this man from a certain organization kept sending me inappropriate photos. I went to the right people and he got in trouble, and it's come back to me that he's done it to 2 other females, and they've complained to me. And the thing that sucks is they even said, but I'm the new girl, I don't want to say anything. And I was like, well, that sucks, because I told them I got treated awful after that. I complained, and it really ruined it, because they wouldn't work with me. So I get that. And this is before the Me Too movement. Sorry, I'm going on a rant, but this is the one thing I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I think it's important, but I also want people to know it's not always going to be bad. I feel like being a woman has actually gotten me quite a bit more exposure, because they're opening up to women. Like, I've been on Barstool Sports, which people are constantly worried about how they treat women, and you know, a lot of places that people consider anti-women are giving me a lot of opportunities, giving other females a lot of opportunities. Did you really think we're going to see Jessica Mendoza have such a prominent role at ESPN? Jenny Kavanaugh doing play-by-play for the Rockies is sensational, and these women are great. Jenny's phenomenal woman, and you know, I work with an amazing woman at MLB.com, and she's great, and she produces my show, and we have fun together, and we respect one another. And I want people to know that there are so many opportunities for women. You don't have to be in the next Erin Andrews. There are so many behind-the-scenes roles you can do: blogging, reporting, scripts, producing. There's so many things you can do, and it's not just because, you know, I don't want you. You shouldn't be good for a woman. You should just be good. And I want people to know that if you're good, it doesn't matter what your gender is. You'll, for the most part, get treated with respect. But I understand no matter what happens, and I chose the sport that the demographic is 55-plus-year-old white man. So if you're going to there's no progression there. I know people think what they're going to think, and that's fine. But after all these years, I'm still not intimidated by it.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And I agree. You know, if you're good at what you do, no matter what your gender is, you should just be good at what you do.
Right.
Let's switch gears. Let's switch gears here a little bit. You mentioned you have a large Twitter following, and you get some pretty interesting tweets directed at you. I'll just put it that way. You get a lot of guys. Obviously, you're a very beautiful woman. You do a lot of things in Major League Baseball, and you know you're famous for, you know, your past work. You get asked out on Twitter a lot. Talk to me about that.
I don't think they actually mean that. And a couple of times, you know, I've been asked out on dates, and I've met people that have asked me out on dates on Twitter. But at the same time, I think it's the keyboard warrior stuff, and it's no different from when people talk crap to me. I'll see them in person and they go silent, right? So it's whatever. But yeah, I get asked that all the time, but a lot of times it's just joking, or they have like their Women Crush Wednesday, and that's fine. But you know, if I turn you down, I don't think that you should make me feel like shit about it, you know, but it just kind of is what it is. I mean, it's fine. It's another form of social media. People tend to forget that. And, you know, it's just so different from me tweeting about politics. You know, people get mad when I do that. We'll stick to sports. Well, I'm a person. I'm going to tweet about that I just downed a beer and ate freaking nachos, because that's what I want to tweet about. It's ridiculous. So if people want to, and that's what actually helped me get my roles, because they know I'm approachable. I'm a human being, and that's why people were able to invite me onto these shows or invite me to do these podcasts and what have you. So I don't feel bad about that stuff. And if somebody wants to ask me out, I'll consider it. I'm single. I'm young, and I'm beautiful. I'm successful. Like, why not? Who wouldn't want to date me? So it's just kind of like that. And I don't even care. It is what it is.
Channeling your inner Joey Votto there. I like
yes.
it. So one of the other things, and I'll put this out on the record for my followers and your followers and my fans and listeners, Jessica is one of my top 3 absolute favorite Twitter followers for the reason she just said. She will tweet everything from baseball to politics to, hey, look, I'm having a Cosmo and, just drinking a beer and, eating food. It's fantastic. One of my favorite things is your opinions on kiss cams and in-stadium proposals. Let's spend the last, 2 minutes talking about in-stadium proposals and kiss cams. How do you feel about that?
Kiss cams I'm not too bad about. In-stadium proposals I can't stand. I can't stand them because I come off as this very tough girl. I love the idea of love. I think it's one of the most rare things you can experience in your life with another person. And I don't mean just a child. I mean like an actual human being around your age or younger or older. I don't judge. Such a rare thing to find that when you want to show off in front of other people, I get that. But if you're just doing that to get on camera or to basically mock this or put the pressure on the poor girl or guy that, oh, you're doing this in front of people, let's make this a joke. Like that I don't like. Plus you're interrupting the game. Like that's where all the attention's going to go to. And I get it, you want fan interaction, but I just think it's such a smack in the face. It interrupts the game. It takes away from what you're there for. And that just annoys me. And I feel like that's disrespectful. But that's my opinion. I feel it's disrespectful to the old school form of love. We'll go with that.
Okay, fair enough. What's the worst proposal that you've seen, either in person or on TV?
The what? The worst proposal? Oh, all of them. Probably though there was one that they made me write about, and I did it for just because there was nothing to write about at the time, and it was right behind the Angels catcher. It was like behind home plate, and somebody proposed to his girl during an Angels game, and I want to say Mike Trout was batting, and I wrote about it. I tweeted it, and my editor was like, "You are so brave. I am so proud of you." And it was, I did it. I got it out of my system. I did it, and it's done. But it grossed me out to do it, and I thought it was annoying. And I know a lot of people get mad, like, oh, you're just bitter because you're single. I was like, no, I can make a phone call and get a husband. It's not that. I just get annoyed because it takes the attention away, and it's a mockery of love.
Absolutely. We're winding down here. We got about a minute and a half left. When do you start your new Bay Area job officially? When can fans be on the lookout for your Bay Area stuff starting?
I moved down there in 7 days. A week from today, I'll be a Bay Area resident again, and then I start November 12th. I probably won't have any content out there for a little bit from NBC because I have to train and everything like that. But I still have a couple of Infinite Justice coming out for MLB.com, and then I'm still going to be pushing out that Cut 4 stuff, and should be good to go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 1 minute left. She is fantastic. You can tell from the last half hour she is one of the most fascinating and personable women in the game of baseball, and just a fantastic, no problem, and just a fantastic woman overall. We've touched on everything from Joey Votto to her dream job to how she's dealt with being a woman in a predominantly male industry, to so much more. Give her a follow at Kleinschmidt, KLEINSCHMIDT JB on Twitter. maybe ask her out, see what she says. You never know. It might help if you guys are Joey Votto fans. Who knows?
Please don't.
Jessica, I cannot thank you enough. Best of luck to you in the next month here as you transition into a new job, and we will be on the lookout for the last couple Infinite Jesses and your work in the Bay Area. Thank you so much, dear, for coming on. I appreciate it greatly.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No problem. Have a good day. Ladies and gentlemen, that was from Cut 4 and MLB, Jessica Kleinschmidt. She is fantastic. You can tell she gets really, really fired up about the Me Too movement, about being a woman in a predominantly male industry. She should be very damn proud of what she's done because she's worked her butt off to get to where she is, and she is absolutely fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a short break here. I got another guest coming on in half an hour's time. I have former MLB pitcher Aaron Ledesma. We're going to talk about his playing career as well as what he's been up to now. He's actually got a very interesting post-baseball career going on. So we'll talk about that. That'll be at 2 Eastern, 1 Central, here on Blog Talk Radio. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you down the road in podcast land.